I am Amber Wilson, 27 years old, and last Christmas changed everything between my family and me. For years, I endured my mother's constant disapproval while my siblings basked in praise. Despite my success as a graphic designer, nothing satisfied her. When she announced to our entire extended family that I was the most useless child we have, something inside me finally snapped. Instead of swallowing the hurt like always, I stood up for myself. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you have ever had to stand up to family members who just refuse to see your worth. Growing up in our pristine colonial home in Westport, Connecticut meant living under the shadow of impossible expectations. Our neighborhood was the kind where people compared landscaping and private school acceptances in the same breath. My father, Dr. Thomas Wilson, built his reputation as one of the most sought-after cardiovascular surgeons in the Northeast. His schedule kept him at the hospital more than home, but when present, his accomplishments loomed large over our dinner conversations. My mother, Julia Wilson, former Miss Connecticut runner-up, orchestrated our family life with precision that bordered on military. Her perfectly highlighted blonde hair never moved out of place, much like her expectations. After giving up a budding modeling career to raise children, she channeled all her ambitions into us. Or more accurately, into my siblings. Ryan, my older brother by 4 years, followed our father's path into medicine without hesitation. Every science fair trophy and perfect report card received prominent display in our living room showcase. By the time I was in high school, he was already at Yale Medical School, making our mother beam with pride during her tennis club luncheons. Stephanie, my sister who is 2 years older than me, excelled in debate and student government before heading to Columbia Law. Her sharp mind and sharper tongue made her the perfect attorney, and mother never tired of mentioning how Stephanie would likely become the first female partner at her prestigious Manhattan firm before turning 35. Then there was me. From childhood, I gravitated toward colors, shapes, and images rather than textbooks. While Ryan dissected frogs with clinical precision and Stephanie argued intellectual points at the dinner table, I filled sketchbooks with designs and drawings that my mother would find and discard during her cleaning frenzies. Art is a nice hobby, Amber, but it is not a career for someone from our family, became her constant refrain. When I won a statewide art competition in 9th grade, my father patted my shoulder and said, "That is nice, sweetheart," before immediately asking Ryan about his college applications. My certificate ended up in my bedroom drawer while Ryan's science award from 3 years prior still held center stage on the fireplace mantel. The pattern continued through high school. My advanced placement art teacher told my parents I had rare talent during a conference, to which my mother responded, "Yes, but how will that help her get into medical school?" The teacher looked confused while I stared at my shoes, already knowing this battle was unwinnable. Family dinners became exercises in invisibility. My parents and siblings would discuss cases, legal precedents, and hospital politics while I pushed food around my plate. On the rare occasions I attempted to share something about my latest art project, Mother would interject with, "Speaking of accomplishments, did you hear about Ryan's research being published?" By senior year of high school, I had learned to exist in the periphery of my own family. My college acceptance to Parsons School of Design in New York should have been celebrated, but instead prompted a family intervention. Graphic design? What kind of stable future is that? My mother asked, pacing our kitchen in her Louboutin heels. Stephanie was accepted to 3 Ivy League schools. Your brother had a full scholarship. And you want to draw pictures for a living? My father, looking uncomfortable but unwilling to contradict his wife, simply said, "We just want what is best for you, pumpkin." What they meant was they wanted what was best for the family image. I went anyway, funding my education through scholarships, part-time jobs, and student loans. Each holiday break became an exercise in emotional endurance. Thanksgiving my freshman year, my mother introduced me to family friends as our daughter who is finding herself in art school, with a tight smile that conveyed her disappointment. Christmas that same year, she gifted me MCT prep books with a note saying it is never too late to transfer to a real program. I donated them to the library unopened. During my sophomore year, when my design was selected for a small but respected advertising campaign, I called home excited. My father answered, listened for approximately 30 seconds before saying, "Your mother is busy with her charity committee. Ryan just matched with his top residency choice. Can I have you call back later?" I stopped sharing my achievements after that. The geographic distance of New York provided some buffer, but each visit home reinforced my status as the family disappointment. While my siblings received prime bedroom space when visiting, I was often relegated to the converted office with the pull-out sofa. Family photos throughout the house chronicled Ryan and Stephanie's milestones, while mine were noticeably absent. After graduation, I secured a position at a boutique design agency in Brooklyn. My starting salary was modest, but the creative freedom was worth it. When I told my parents, my mother said, "Well, I suppose you can always live with roommates indefinitely. Not everyone is meant for success." As my career progressed, I gradually reduced my visits home to major holidays only. Phone calls became shorter, with my mother dominating conversations with updates about my siblings. Ryan's engagement to another doctor warranted a special family dinner I had to miss due to a work deadline, something my mother referenced for months afterward as proof of my lack of family commitment. In the lead-up to last Christmas, I had finally landed a major client, a household name brand that sought me out specifically for their rebranding campaign. The contract was substantial enough that I could finally afford my own apartment without roommates in a decent Brooklyn neighborhood. For once, I had something tangible that even my achievement-oriented family might recognize. My portfolio had expanded, my work had been featured in several industry publications, and I had even been asked to speak at a design conference. After years of doubt, I finally felt secure in my career path and eager, perhaps foolishly, to share this success with my family. Little did I know that this Christmas would become the breaking point of 27 years of accumulated dismissal and disappointment. The week before Christmas, I stood in an upscale Manhattan boutique agonizing over gifts for my family. Each year, I tried to find the perfect presents that might finally earn their approval, as if the right cashmere sweater or limited edition book could make them see me as worthy. For my father, I had found a rare first edition medical text he had once mentioned wanting. The antiquarian bookseller had helped me track it down, and it had cost nearly a full paycheck. For Stephanie, I selected an elegant leather briefcase from a designer she had mentioned in passing. For Ryan and his fiancée, I created a custom illustrated timeline of their relationship, professionally framed. For my mother, I had spent months secretly commissioning a well-known local artist to paint our family home, the backdrop of so many complicated memories. The artist had captured the property in golden summer light, making it look like the perfect family estate my mother always wanted people to see. "You are really going all out this year," commented the saleswoman as she wrapped my final purchase. "It is a special Christmas," I replied, though I could not explain why I still tried so hard to impress people who never seemed impressed. That evening, I called my best friend Taylor, who had witnessed my family dynamics firsthand during college. "Amber, you know I support you, but I am worried," she said after I detailed my gift plans. "Every year you go home thinking this time will be different, and every year you call me crying on December 26th. This year is different," I insisted. "I finally have something concrete to show them. The Norrington account is huge. Even my mother cannot dismiss that." Taylor's sigh carried years of protective frustration. "Just promise me you will not pin your happiness on their reaction. Your work is amazing. Your life is amazing. You do not need their validation." "I know, I lied. I just want to share my success with them. Just remember you can always come to my family's place if things get rough," she offered. "My mom already bought your favorite peppermint ice cream just in case." The drive to Connecticut on December 23rd felt like heading into battle. I rehearsed casual ways to mention my achievements without sounding boastful. The Norrington executives had specifically requested me by name. My designs would be on products nationwide. The contract had allowed me financial independence in one of the world's most expensive cities. Surely that would be enough. The family home looked like a Christmas card, with perfect white lights outlining each architectural feature and a designer wreath on the glossy black door. I parked my used Civic between Ryan's Tesla and Stephanie's Mercedes, already feeling the familiar inadequacy seeping in. My mother answered the door in a festive red sweater, her critical eye immediately scanning me from head to toe. "Amber, you finally made it. Your hair is certainly interesting these days." She reached out to touch my shoulder-length bob, recently dyed with subtle rose gold highlights for a winter wedding I had in my portfolio. "I suppose creative types need to express themselves. Come in before you let all the heat out." No hug. No, I missed you. Just immediate criticism followed by practical concerns about the heating bill. My father emerged from his study, offering a brief one-armed hug. "There is my artistic daughter. Good drive down." Before I could answer, he glanced at his watch. "The Patriots game is about to start. We will catch up at dinner." He disappeared back toward the media room, the conversation already over. I carried my suitcase and carefully wrapped gifts inside, hearing my siblings' voices from the kitchen. When I entered, Ryan looked up from his phone briefly. "Hey sis, good to see you survived another year in the big bad city." Stephanie, arranging a charcuterie board with mathematical precision, offered a tight smile. "The prodigal designer returns. How is that little job of yours going? Still drawing logos for coffee shops?" I forced a smile. "Actually, I just landed the Norrington account. They are completely rebranding and chose my design concept over several major agencies." "Norrington? The grocery store chain?" Ryan asked, his attention still mostly on his phone. "Huh. Do they pay well for that kind of thing?" "It is actually a pretty significant contract," I started to explain. My mother interrupted, thrusting a vegetable peeler into my hand. "Amber, since you are just standing there, make yourself useful and help with dinner. Stephanie has been here since morning helping while you slept in and drove up late." I bit back the explanation that I had worked until 2 a.m. finishing projects before taking time off, instead obediently taking over the vegetable preparation. My mother hovered nearby, adjusting the angle of my knife and commenting that I was making the pieces too large, then too small. "I never understood why someone who works with visual arts cannot seem to cut a carrot properly," she muttered, eventually taking over the task herself. Later that afternoon, I overheard my mother in the living room as neighbors stopped by with holiday cookies. She proudly showed off Ryan's medical journal with his published research and passed around photos of Stephanie at a legal conference where she had presented. When one neighbor politely asked, "And what about your youngest?" "Amber, right? How is she doing?" I paused in the hallway to listen. "Oh, she is still finding her way," my mother replied with a practiced laugh. "You know how it is with some children. They take longer to settle into something worthwhile." I slipped away before I could hear more, finding my portfolio tucked under a stack of magazines where I had left it on the coffee table earlier, hoping someone might take interest. I quietly returned it to my suitcase. That evening, extended family arrived for a pre-Christmas dinner. My aunt, uncle, and 3 cousins joined us, along with my grandmother. Despite being 27, I found myself seated at the secondary table with my teenage cousins while all the successful adults sat at the main dining table. "So you draw stuff for a living?" my 16-year-old cousin asked between textures. "Graphic design is more complicated than that," I started to explain. "That is cool," he interrupted. "I am thinking of being a YouTuber." I spent the meal answering questions about whether I could help him design his channel logo, while from the main table I heard my mother proudly detailing Ryan's recent promotion and Stephanie's important case. The evening wound down with my father and uncle discussing investment strategies, my mother and aunt comparing notes on their country club's holiday gala, and my siblings receiving eager questions about their professional lives. When my grandmother kindly asked about my work, my mother quickly redirected the conversation to the Christmas Day plans. As I lay in the uncomfortable pull-out bed that night, I scrolled through congratulatory messages from colleagues about the Norrington account, feeling the stark contrast between my professional and family lives. In one world, I was valued and respected. In the other, I was still the disappointment who chose the wrong path. Little did I know that Christmas Day would push this painful dynamic to its breaking point. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight reflecting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. For a brief moment, Lying in bed watching ice crystals glitter on the window, I felt a flicker of childlike Christmas excitement. Perhaps today would be different. I had carefully arranged all my gifts under the tree the night before, positioning them prominently with their professional wrapping and thoughtful gift tags. By the time I made it downstairs in my holiday sweater and carefully applied makeup, the family was already gathered in the living room. "Finally decided to join us," my mother commented, checking her watch. "We have been waiting to open gifts, but I suppose creative types need their beauty sleep." I mumbled an apology despite having only slept until 8:30 a.m., taking the last available seat, a footstool near the edge of the family circle. Gift opening began with my father distributing the presents. Ryan and his fiancée Jennifer received several large boxes. Stephanie had a similar pile. My stack consisted of 2 small packages and a gift card envelope. I watched eagerly as my family opened my carefully selected gifts. My father unwrapped the rare medical text with polite interest. "This is quite old," he commented, flipping through a few pages. "Interesting historical perspective, though completely outdated now, of course." "Thank you, Amber." He set it aside without further comment, moving quickly to exclaim over the new golf clubs Stephanie had given him. Stephanie opened her designer briefcase next, examining it with a critical eye. "This is nice, though I just got a new one from the partners last month. The firm uses Smythson exclusively. But this could be a good backup, I suppose." My mother unwrapped the commissioned painting of our house, studying it with pursed lips. "Well, this is certainly colorful," she said finally. "Though the artist took some liberties with the landscaping. Our hydrangeas are not nearly so prominent. But it was a creative thought. We can hang it in the guest bathroom." Ryan and Jennifer at least seemed genuinely pleased with their custom relationship timeline, though Ryan quickly added, "You could probably make good money doing these for people as side gigs if the design work dries up." When my turn came, I opened my gifts to find a generic gift card to a department store from my father, a self-help book titled Finding Your Professional Purpose from my mother, and a basic sweater from Stephanie that still had the clearance tag partially attached. "I thought the book might help you finally figure out a sustainable career path," my mother explained. "The reviews said it is excellent for people who feel adrift professionally." I forced a smile. "Thank you. It looks interesting." I carefully did not mention that I had been at the same design firm for 4 years with regular promotions and raises. After the living room was cleared of wrapping paper, I attempted to bring out my portfolio as everyone settled with coffee. I brought some samples of my recent work, including the Norrington campaign concepts I said, opening the leather folio. They really liked my approach to modernizing their brand while maintaining recognition elements. Speaking of recognition, my mother interrupted. "Ryan just had another paper accepted for publication." "Tell everyone about it, Ryan." My portfolio sat open on my lap, unviewed, as Ryan detailed his research methodology for 10 minutes. When he finished, I tried again. "The Norrington campaign will actually be national. Their products are in almost every state, so my designs will be on packaging across the country." "Amber, could you help me in the kitchen?" my mother asked, already standing. "Stephanie, why do not you show Jennifer the album of Ryan's medical school graduation? I am sure she would love to see it." In the kitchen, I was assigned menial tasks while my mother handled the important cooking aspects. Every suggestion I made was dismissed, every technique questioned. "No, not like that," she sighed, taking over the potato mashing. "After 27 years, I would think you would know how to properly prepare a simple dish." Later, I overheard my mother on the phone with her sister who could not attend. "Ryan is just thriving at the hospital. They are already talking about making him chief resident next year. And Stephanie is working on a case that might set legal precedent. We are so blessed with such accomplished children." A pause. "Amber?" "Yes, she is here too. Still doing the design thing. You know how she is, always marching to her own drummer instead of pursuing something substantial." During a lull in the afternoon activities, I tried to connect with Stephanie as she worked on her laptop in the study. "Busy day to be working," I commented, offering her a cup of coffee I had brought. She accepted it without looking up. "Some of us have responsibilities that do not pause for holidays. This case could make my career." I understand. My deadline for the Norrington project was intense too. I worked through 3 weekends to perfect the presentation. Stephanie finally looked up, a condescending smile on her face. Amber, let us be real. Making grocery store logos colorful is not quite the same as defending a multinational corporation in a precedent-setting case. It is cute that you enjoy your little job, but please do not equate it with actual professional pressure. I retreated, stung by her dismissal. In the kitchen, I offered to help with dinner preparations again, determined to be useful. I can make the cranberry sauce. I have a great recipe I developed last year. My mother handed me the can opener and a can of store-bought cranberry sauce. We are not experimenting today. Just open this and put it in the crystal dish. When I attempted to arrange it artfully in the dish, my mother sighed dramatically. For goodness sake, Amber, it is cranberry sauce, not one of your art projects. Just put it in the dish normally. As the afternoon progressed, the kitchen became more chaotic with dinner preparations. When I tried to help baste the turkey, my mother swooped in. The last time you handled the turkey, it was dry as sandpaper. I will do this. Mom, that was 10 years ago when I was 17, I protested. And clearly you have not spent the intervening time learning to cook properly, she replied. Some skills actually matter in life. The final straw came when I accidentally knocked over a measuring cup of broth while reaching for a utensil. It splashed onto the counter but not onto any food. My mother reacted as though I had set the kitchen on fire. This is why I cannot trust you with important tasks. Go set the table or something. At least try not to break the good china. I retreated to my childhood bedroom, fighting tears of frustration. I texted Taylor, it is worse than ever. Nothing I do is right. Nothing I am is enough. She replied immediately, remember who you are outside of that house. The Amber I know is talented, successful, and strong. Do not let them make you forget that. Stand your ground. Taking a deep breath, I fixed my makeup and returned downstairs, determined to make it through the evening with my dignity intact. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come. By 6 o'clock, the dining room had transformed into a holiday masterpiece. The table gleamed with my mother's best china, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier overhead. Polished silver flatware flanked each plate with military precision. The centerpiece featured fresh pine boughs, red candles, and artfully arranged ornaments that perfectly complemented the room's color scheme. The doorbell chimed, announcing the arrival of our extended family. Grandparents Wilson, my father's parents, entered first. Grandmother in her elegant emerald dress, grandfather leaning slightly on his cane, but still commanding respect. My mother's sister Aunt Carol and her husband Uncle Peter followed with their 2 college-aged children. My mother's brother Uncle James, his wife Aunt Diane, and their teenage son completed the group. I helped take coats and made polite small talk, carefully avoiding any mention of my work after the day's earlier rejections. Everyone gradually migrated to the living room for pre-dinner drinks and appetizers. Aunt Diane, always the kindest of the extended family, sought me out by the fireplace. Amber, honey, I have not seen you since last Christmas. Tell me what you have been up to. Still creating beautiful designs. Her genuine interest warmed me, and I cautiously shared some details about my recent projects. Actually, I just landed a major account with Norrington. They're a national brand looking to modernize while keeping their recognition elements. It was quite competitive. That sounds impressive. I always knew you had special talent. Is your work going to be in stores across the country then? She asked, her eyes showing actual interest. Before I could answer, my mother appeared with a tray of canapes. Diane, let me tell you about Ryan's latest publication. He is revolutionizing approaches to cardiac care. Amber, would you check if your father needs help with the wine? As I walked away, I heard my mother smoothly redirecting the conversation to my brother's accomplishments. My moment of connection had been swiftly severed. Dinner was announced at 7, and everyone found their assigned seats. I noticed I had been placed at the far end of the table, while Ryan and Stephanie flanked my parents near the head. The seating arrangement itself told a story about family hierarchy. My father stood for the traditional family toast, crystal glass raised. To another blessed year for the Wilson family. We are proud to celebrate Ryan's groundbreaking research and upcoming chief residency appointment. Ryan nodded modestly as approving murmurs circulated. And to Stephanie, my father continued, whose brilliant legal mind continues to impress everyone at her firm, with partnership on the horizon. Stephanie smiled, accepting the acknowledgement as her due. My father scanned the table, his eyes briefly meeting mine before moving on. And to all of us gathered here, Merry Christmas. No mention of my accomplishments. Not even a generic acknowledgement. The omission hung in the air like an unacknowledged ghost, at least to me. Everyone else seemed not to notice as they clinked glasses and began passing dishes. Conversation flowed around topics that highlighted my siblings' achievements. Ryan discussed hospital politics. Stephanie debated recent Supreme Court decisions with my grandfather. When I attempted to join a discussion about marketing trends, my mother smoothly redirected. Speaking of marketing, Ryan's hospital is implementing an innovative patient outreach program. Tell them about it, dear. Halfway through the meal, Uncle James, who worked in business development, innocently opened a door to disaster. I noticed Norrington stores are getting a complete rebrand. Their old logo was getting quite dated. Good move on their part. I smiled, seeing a natural opening. Actually, I am leading that rebranding effort. They selected my design concepts over several major agencies. A brief moment of surprised silence followed. Well, that is certainly something, Uncle James replied, looking genuinely impressed. That is a major national chain. Congratulations. Thank you, I said, feeling a small glow of validation. It is the biggest account I have handled independently. The rollout starts next quarter. Speaking of next quarter, my mother interjected, Stephanie will be arguing before the Federal Appeals Court. That is quite an achievement for someone her age. Uncle James, however, seemed genuinely interested in my work. How did you land such a big client, Amber? That must have been quite competitive. Before I could answer, Uncle Peter joined in. James raises a good point. Wilson family members have always contributed significantly to their fields. I am curious how everyone is building on their family legacy. He looked around the table. Ryan is clearly advancing medical science like his father. Stephanie is making waves in law. Amber, what would you say is your contribution to the family's professional standing? The question hung in the air for a moment. I opened my mouth to answer, to finally explain how I was building my own success and reputation in my field, when my mother's voice cut through the silence. She is the most useless child we have. The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples of uncomfortable silence spread around the table. Some nervous laughter followed, as though assuming she had made a poor joke. But my mother's expression held no humor, only a dismissive certainty that froze my blood. Grandmother Wilson's fork clattered against her plate. Aunt Diane drew in a sharp breath. Ryan suddenly became intensely interested in his mashed potatoes. Stephanie at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. My father cleared his throat, but said nothing to contradict or soften the statement. The room seemed to tilt around me. 27 years of dismissal, criticism, and emotional neglect crystallized in that single moment of brutal clarity. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my fork. Time seemed to slow as memories cascaded through my mind, art projects removed from the refrigerator to make room for Ryan's awards. My mother forgetting to attend my high school art showcase while driving 2 hours for Stephanie's debate tournament. College tuition discussions that excluded my chosen major as not a real investment. Every backhanded compliment, every comparison, every diminishment of my choices and accomplishments. I saw with perfect clarity how I had spent my entire life seeking approval from people who had decided long ago that my path had no value. How I had twisted myself into knots trying to translate my successes into terms they might respect. How I had accepted the role of family disappointment without questioning whether I was actually disappointing at all. In that crystalline moment of awareness, I faced a choice: continue absorbing the hurt or finally stand up for myself. For once, I chose myself. I placed my napkin beside my plate and slowly stood. The dining room fell completely silent. All eyes turned toward me, expressions ranging from my mother's irritation to my grandmother's concern to my cousin's wide-eyed fascination. My heart pounded so hard I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. My mouth felt dry. But beneath the anxiety flowed a current of calm certainty. For perhaps the first time in my family's presence, I knew exactly who I was and what I needed to say. For 27 years, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. I have tried to earn your approval by your standards. Today, I realized that was never going to happen, and more importantly, it does not need to. My mother's face tightened. Amber, do not be dramatic. This is hardly the time for one of your emotional displays. Actually, Mom, this is exactly the time, I continued calmly. You just called me useless in front of our entire family. If not now, when would be appropriate to address that? I turned to face the table more fully. I have built a successful career doing what I love. The Norrington account that none of you seem interested in hearing about will put my designs in every state in America. I was selected over agencies with decades more experience because my work stood out. Last month, I was a featured speaker at the National Design Conference. My portfolio has been published in industry magazines. I have built a client list that allows me to live independently in one of the most expensive cities in the country. I looked directly at my siblings. Ryan, Stephanie, I have always supported and celebrated your achievements. I have listened to detailed accounts of medical procedures and legal briefs. I have shared your accomplishments with my friends. Yet neither of you has ever once asked to see my portfolio or expressed genuine interest in my work. Ryan had the grace to look ashamed, while Stephanie maintained a neutral expression. I turned to my father. Dad, you taught us that success comes from dedication and excellence. I have dedicated myself to excellence in my field, yet you have never acknowledged that my path could be valid too. Your silence when Mom dismisses my career has been as hurtful as her words. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair, unable to meet my eyes. To be clear, I continued, addressing the whole table now, I am not asking for special praise or acknowledgement. I am simply asking for the same respect given to other adults at this table. My career path is different, not lesser. My success looks different, not smaller. My mother attempted to interrupt again, but Grandmother Wilson raised a hand to stop her. I do not need your approval anymore, I said directly to my mother. What I needed was your support, your interest, your willingness to see me for who I am rather than who you wanted me to be. I needed a mother who could be proud of a daughter who found her own path rather than following a prescribed one. My voice remained level, though emotion threatened to break through. Do you know what is truly useless? Spending your life trying to please people who have decided in advance that you cannot. That is what I have been doing, and it stops today. I paused, looking at each family member in turn. I love all of you. I value this family. But I will no longer accept being treated as less than, being seated at the far end of the table both literally and figuratively in our family dynamic. Grandmother Wilson nodded slightly, her eyes bright with what looked like pride. If my worth to this family is measured only by how closely my life matches your predetermined expectations, then you have all missed knowing a person who has much to offer. That is your loss, not mine. My mother's face had transformed from irritation to a cold anger. Are you quite finished with this performance? You have always had a flair for the dramatic. This is exactly why your father and I worried about your career choice. Everything becomes an emotional spectacle with you. No, Julia, Grandmother Wilson interjected firmly. Amber is making perfect sense, and you would do well to listen. The unexpected support from my traditionally reserved grandmother momentarily stunned the table into silence. I took a deep breath. I do not need you to suddenly understand or appreciate my career. What I need, what I am establishing right now, is a boundary. I will be treated with respect, or I will not be present. It is that simple. Uncle James cleared his throat. I think what Amber has accomplished sounds remarkable. I would actually love to hear more about how you approach the Norrington rebrand. My mother cut in sharply. James, do not encourage this behavior. Amber has always been sensitive and prone to exaggeration. This outburst is exactly why we worry about her emotional stability. Mom, I said quietly, this attempt to paint me as unstable rather than addressing what you said is exactly the problem. I am not overreacting to being called useless by my own mother at Christmas dinner. I looked around at my family one more time. I came here hoping to share my joy and success with the people I love. Instead, I was reminded why I have gradually reduced my visits home. I deserve better, and until that is possible, I need to protect myself. With those words, I stepped back from the table. I will be packing my things and returning to New York tonight. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. As I walked from the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, one I had carried for so long I had forgotten it was there. For the first time in my family home, I felt truly free. Upstairs in my temporary bedroom, I methodically packed my suitcase, hands still trembling slightly from adrenaline. The house below had erupted into a buzz of voices after my departure, though I could not make out individual conversations. I focused on folding my clothes neatly, tucking away my toiletries, and gathering the few personal items I had brought. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Alyssa. "What you just did was badass. For what it is worth, I think your design work sounds amazing. Proud of you for standing up for yourself." The unexpected support brought tears to my eyes that I quickly blinked away. I was determined not to break down, at least not until I was safely away from this house. A soft knock at the door interrupted my packing. I expected my mother, ready with recriminations about ruining Christmas. Instead, my father stood in the doorway, looking older and more uncertain than I had ever seen him. "Amber," he began hesitantly. "You do not need to leave tonight. The roads will be icy, and it is getting late." "I need to go, Dad," I replied, continuing to pack. "I cannot stay in this house tonight." He stepped into the room, closing the door partially behind him. "What your mother said was wrong. I should have said something immediately. But you did not," I responded, not unkindly. "You never do. Your mother has strong opinions about success," he offered weakly. "Dad, this is not about different opinions. She called me useless in front of our entire family. That goes beyond having high standards or different values." He sighed heavily, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I have always admired your courage, you know. Following your passion despite our reservations. Admiration without support is not particularly helpful," I said, zipping my suitcase closed. I needed parents who could see my worth even if it looked different than they expected. "I failed you there," he admitted quietly. "We both did, in different ways." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You did." I lifted my suitcase from the bed. "I love you, Dad. But I need to create some distance right now. I will call when I get back to the city." As I moved toward the door, another knock sounded. Ryan stood there, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. My father nodded and slipped out, leaving Ryan and me alone. My brother closed the door and leaned against it. "So that was quite a dinner speech." "Not how I planned to spend Christmas," I replied. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture from childhood that made him momentarily look like the brother I had once been close to. "Look, I know I have been a jerk. Self-absorbed. I just wanted to say, I get it more than you might think." "Get what, exactly?" "The pressure. The expectations." He hesitated. "Sometimes I wonder if I even wanted medicine or if I just followed the path of least resistance." "You had the courage to choose differently." I set down my suitcase, surprised by this glimpse of vulnerability from my always confident brother. "Mom and Dad practically mapped out my entire life," he continued. "Medical school, specialty, even the kind of person I should marry. Sometimes I envy your freedom to build your own life, to choose your own definition of success." "It has not felt very free," I admitted. "Not when it came with constant disapproval." Ryan nodded. "I should have stood up for you more. Been more interested in your work. The truth is, I barely understand what I want, let alone having the courage to pursue it like you have." This confession from my seemingly perfect brother left me momentarily speechless. "It is not too late to figure that out," I finally said. "Even Dr. Perfect is allowed to question his choices." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Maybe. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I think what you said down there was long overdue. And I am sorry for my part in making you feel less than." He awkwardly extended his hand for a handshake, then changed his mind and gave me a brief, stiff hug before retreating from the room. Downstairs, I could hear my mother's voice rising in indignation. She has always been dramatic, turning a simple comment into a federal case and ruining Christmas dinner. I shouldered my bag and descended the stairs, prepared for a final confrontation. In the foyer, Grandmother Wilson intercepted me. "My dear," she said, taking my hands in her papery ones, "it took courage to say what you did. Your grandfather and I are very proud of the woman you have become." "Thank you," I whispered, fighting tears again. "Your mother is complicated. She struggles to see beyond her narrow view of success. That is her limitation, not yours." With a gentle squeeze of my hands, she let me go. I moved toward the door, where my mother now stood with arms crossed. "So you are really leaving on Christmas night," she said, her tone making it an accusation. "Destroying our family dinner was not enough?" "Mom, I did not destroy anything. I simply stood up for myself after years of dismissal culminating in being called useless." "You are twisting my words," she insisted. "It was a momentary comment, not some grand statement on your worth. A momentary comment that perfectly summarized how you have made me feel my entire life," I replied calmly. "I am not angry anymore, just clear about what I need going forward." "And what exactly is that?" she asked coldly. "Respect. Basic human respect for my choices, my accomplishments, and my path. Without that, we cannot have a healthy relationship." She scoffed. "So dramatic. Always making everything about your feelings. Goodbye, Mom. I will call when I am ready." I stepped around her and walked out the front door into the cold December night. The drive back to New York through light snow gave me hours to process what had happened. Tears came intermittently, but underneath the sadness was a foundation of certainty. Something fundamental had shifted inside me, a reclamation of my own worth that could not be undone. I arrived at my apartment after midnight, dropping my bags in the entryway and collapsing onto my couch. Only then did I allow myself to fully feel everything: grief for the supportive family I had never had, anger at years of dismissal, relief at finally standing up for myself, and, underneath it all, a surprising sense of freedom. The next morning, my phone was flooded with texts and missed calls. My mother had sent several messages, each more accusatory than the last, culminating in, "I hope you are satisfied with ruining Christmas for everyone. When you are ready to apologize for your behavior, we can discuss moving forward." Stephanie had sent a single text that was completely unnecessary and selfish. "Mom is upset and Dad is disappointed. Way to make Christmas about you." There were also messages from extended family members. "Aunt I and expressed support. You said what needed saying for years. Here if you need to talk." Uncle James asked if I would be willing to show him my portfolio sometime. Cousins sent varying messages of support or confusion. After reading through everything, I made a decision. I blocked my mother's number, at least temporarily. I needed space to process without her attempts to make me doubt myself or accept blame for her behavior. When I returned to work after the holiday, my colleagues immediately noticed something different. "You seem lighter somehow," my work friend Zoe commented. "Good Christmas." Clarifying, I replied with a small smile. "Very clarifying." My boss called me into her office that afternoon. "The Norrington team sent over the most glowing feedback about your presentation. They specifically mentioned your confidence and clear vision. I am officially moving you to lead designer on all their implementations with a corresponding raise." Rather than downplaying the achievement as I might have before, I simply said, "Thank you. I worked hard on that proposal and I am excited to see it through." She studied me for a moment. "Something is different about you, Amber. Whatever it is, it suits you." In the weeks that followed, I declined an invitation to my cousin's birthday celebration, the first family event after Christmas. Instead of making excuses, I was honest. I am taking some space from family gatherings while establishing healthier boundaries. I would love to meet you one-on-one for coffee sometime. To my surprise, several relatives respected this boundary and reached out individually. Connections I had thought were wholly dependent on family gatherings began to evolve into more authentic relationships. With each passing day, I felt my confidence growing, not just professionally, but personally. The constant background radiation of seeking approval had diminished, leaving room for clearer thinking and more genuine self-expression. The most unexpected change was in how I viewed my own success. Without the distorting lens of my family's judgment, I could finally see my accomplishments clearly. I was good at what I did. I had built a career I loved. That was enough, whether anyone in my family could recognize it or not. 3 months after the Christmas dinner confrontation, I sat across from my therapist, Dr. Marshall, in her sunlit office overlooking a small park just coming into spring bloom. "So today marks our 12th session," she noted, checking her notes. "When you first came in January, you described feeling both liberated and terrified after standing up to your family. How would you describe your feelings now?" I considered her question carefully. "More settled. Like I am standing on solid ground for the first time in my adult life. I still have moments of doubt and guilt, but they are less frequent and less intense." After the Christmas incident, I had realized I needed professional help to process decades of family dynamics. Weekly therapy had become my anchor as I navigated the complex aftermath of my confrontation. "You mentioned your father reached out again," she prompted. I nodded. "He wants to meet for lunch next week. Just the two of us." My relationship with my father had taken an unexpected turn. After several tentative phone conversations, he had begun to acknowledge his role in enabling my mother's behavior. Our communications were still awkward, but increasingly authentic. He admitted last week that he always respected my creativity, but never knew how to express it when my mother was so dismissive. It is not an excuse, but it helps me understand him better. "And how are you feeling about seeing him one-on-one?" "Cautiously optimistic," I replied. "He seems genuinely interested in getting to know me as I am, not as they wanted me to be." He even asked for the link to my professional website and actually looked at my portfolio. The lunch with my father the following week proved surprisingly meaningful. He arrived at the restaurant with a copy of the design magazine that had featured my work. "I got a subscription," he explained somewhat sheepishly. "I want to understand your world better." Over pasta, he spoke more openly than he ever had. "I failed you as a father, Amber. I let your mother's narrow definition of success dictate how we treated all of you. Ryan is showing signs of burnout. Stephanie works constantly but never seems happy, and we nearly lost our relationship with you completely. Why did you never intervene?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. He sighed deeply. "The path of least resistance. Your mother has always been formidable. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself her way was right. That success had to look a certain way. It was easier than questioning our choices. For the first time, I saw my father as a flawed human rather than an authority figure, someone who had made mistakes but was trying, however imperfectly, to make amends. As we parted, he hugged me properly for perhaps the first time in my adult life. "I am proud of you, Amber. Not just for your success, but for your courage to live authentically. I wish I had had half your bravery at your age." 2 weeks later, Ryan surprised me by visiting New York. He texted on a Friday afternoon, "In the city for a conference. Dinner tonight." We met at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. The initial awkwardness gradually gave way to the most honest conversation we had ever had. "I have been thinking a lot about what you said at Christmas," he admitted over dessert. "About following your own path. I have been doing some soul searching about medicine." "Having doubts?" I asked. "Not about medicine itself. I do love the work. But the specialization, the hospital politics, the relentless pressure to publish and advance. Sometimes I wonder if I would be happier in a small practice focusing on patient care." "That sounds like a Ryan I have never met before," I said with a small smile. "Yeah, well, watching my little sister stand up for her choices made me realize I should examine my own." He hesitated. "I broke up with Jennifer." "What?" "Why? I thought you two were heading toward marriage. She fit the perfect doctor's wife mold. Looked good on paper. But after Christmas, I started asking myself if I actually loved her or if she was just another checkbox on the approved life plan." He shook his head ruefully. "Turns out, I did not even know what I wanted in a relationship because I had never really thought about it independently." As the evening progressed, it felt like meeting a new version of my brother, one who was questioning and vulnerable rather than confidently following a prescribed path. Before leaving, he asked to see my workspace. In my small home office, he studied my design boards and sketches with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly trying to understand my world. "You know," he said as he was leaving, "I always thought you were brave. Even when I was winning all the approval, part of me envied your willingness to follow your own star." My relationship with Stephanie took longer to shift. Her loyalty to our mother ran deep, and she initially maintained that I had overreacted at Christmas. But even she could not ignore reality forever. In April, my work for Norrington was featured in a major business publication highlighting successful rebranding campaigns. The article mentioned me by name and included an interview discussing my design philosophy. Stephanie texted a screenshot of the article with a brief message, "Saw this today. Impressive work." It was hardly effusive, but from Stephanie, it represented a significant acknowledgement. A week later, she called. "I need some design advice for a presentation to the partners," she began without preamble. "Your corporate work is actually quite relevant to what I am trying to communicate." As we discussed her presentation, something subtle shifted between us. For the first time, she was approaching me as a professional with valuable expertise rather than a lesser sibling who had chosen an inferior path. "The article about your work was really good," she admitted before hanging up. Mother saw it too, though she would never say so. My mother remained the most resistant to change. For 2 months after Christmas, we had no direct communication. I maintained my boundary, keeping her number blocked while I focused on my own healing. In March, I finally unblocked her, though I did not immediately reach out. A week later, she called. "Amber," she began formally, "I think this silence has gone on long enough. Your father says you are refusing to attend Easter unless certain conditions are met." "Not conditions, Mom. Boundaries. I need acknowledgement of how your words and actions have affected me and a commitment to more respectful treatment going forward." She sighed audibly. "You have always been sensitive. I simply have high standards for all my children." "That is not an apology or acknowledgement, Mom. That is continuing to blame me for having reasonable feelings about being called useless." The conversation ended in a stalemate, but something had changed. For the first time, I had maintained my boundary without emotional turmoil. Her disapproval no longer devastated me. Easter approached, the next major family gathering. After careful consideration and discussion with Dr. Marshall, I decided to attend, but with clear boundaries in place. I emailed the entire family, "I will be attending Easter dinner. I look forward to seeing everyone and request that we focus on connecting respectfully as adults. If critical or dismissive comments occur, I will calmly leave rather than engage in conflict." The Easter gathering proved to be a turning point. My mother, while not openly apologetic, made visible efforts to moderate her behavior. When Aunt Diane asked about my work, my mother did not interrupt or redirect the conversation. When I brought a portfolio to show interested relatives, she remained neutral rather than dismissive. It was far from perfect, but it was progress. The most telling moment came when Uncle James mentioned the business article featuring my work. "I showed it to colleagues at my firm," he said. "Really impressive rebranding strategy. You have a good eye for maintaining brand recognition while modernizing." My mother, pouring coffee nearby, paused almost imperceptibly before saying, "Amber has always had an eye for visual elements, even as a child." It was not exactly effusive praise, but from my mother, this neutral acknowledgement represented a seismic shift. As spring turned to summer, my professional life continued to flourish. The Norrington campaign launched nationwide to positive industry response. My raise allowed me to move to a slightly larger apartment with a dedicated office space. I began mentoring junior designers at the firm, discovering a talent for nurturing others' creative development. More importantly, I continued building what my therapist called my chosen family, friends and colleagues who appreciated me for exactly who I was. Taylor remained my steadfast supporter, but my circle expanded to include other creative professionals, neighbors, and even a few colleagues who became close friends. In June, I met Daniel, a children's book illustrator who approached creativity with the same passion I did. Our relationship developed naturally, without the constant anxiety I had felt with previous partners about whether they would meet my family's approval. When Daniel eventually did meet some of my family at a casual dinner, he observed afterward, "I can see why you struggled with them for so long. The undercurrents are intense. But you handle it with such grace now." The greatest gift of the Christmas confrontation was the freedom to define success on my own terms. I had always thought I wanted my family's approval, but what I actually needed was my own approval, free from their distorting influence. My mother would likely never fully understand or validate my choices. My father was trying in his imperfect way. My siblings were on their own journeys of self-discovery. But for the first time, my well-being did not depend on any of them changing. Looking back, that devastating comment at Christmas dinner had become an unexpected gift of clarity. It forced me to see what had always been true but too painful to acknowledge. I could not make people value what they were determined to dismiss. My only power lay in valuing myself and creating boundaries that protected that self-worth. The journey of healing family relationships is never truly complete. There would always be difficult moments, old patterns that threatened to reemerge, new boundaries to establish. But I was no longer the insecure daughter desperately seeking validation. I was Amber Wilson, successful designer, loyal friend, and a woman who finally understood that her worth was never dependent on others' ability to recognize it. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to stop trying to earn love that should be freely given. In standing up at that Christmas dinner, I had finally given myself the acceptance I had spent a lifetime seeking from others. And that, perhaps, was the greatest design I would ever create, a life built on self-respect and authentic connection, rather than the shifting sands of others' approval. Have you ever had to stand up to family who could not see your worth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult family dynamics. Remember that your worth is never dependent on others' recognition of it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage in your own path to self-acceptance.